Someone said, Destiny, lack of empathy can be absolutely advantageous though. For example, people can get too wrapped up in others' problems. I would hate to be that sort of person. Empathy. Some level of empathy is required. If you don't have some level of empathy, I think you're incompatible with human society, and I wouldn't want like anybody like that to be in human society. It would be too scary. People without empathy would probably be capable of doing like horrible things. You shouldn't want, like, empathy is most likely, I would say, as somebody that doesn't believe in like real morality, empathy is probably the building block or the foundation on which you start to build a successful society. A bunch of people without empathy would be too prone to malfeasance or taking advantage of or fighting over other people, such that you really wouldn't want those people to be involved in your society. Okay, maybe probably shouldn't be saying that. And it's like, okay, well, at least he's gonna maybe end it. He'll end it with a good hand kiss and then walk away. Okay. Oh, okay, maybe just a cheek. Maybe just one on the cheek is not bad. Okay, the other cheek is okay. I don't know about the forehead. Okay, yeah, you kind of, Drake, you...
Your basic take is that, like, federally, a $15 minimum wage might not be such a good thing, right? It should be left up to, like, kind of like state and local authorities.
My ultra black pill take on minimum wage, and I don't know if this is possible to do, the ultra black pill take is that different people should be getting paid different wages. That's the ultra black pill take. So, like, the problem that I have with the minimum wage is there's two huge problems. One is that it treats all geographies the same, and two is that it treats all earners the same. So number one is that, like, the first one is obvious. A minimum wage in Seattle probably needs to be a lot different than the minimum wage in Des Moines, right? That's obvious. But the second thing is that the minimum wage of an earner that is like a high school like worker versus a single mom that with a family of like 3 that she's taking care of, the wage like necessities for these people are very different. And I think that minimum wage is just a very blunt hammer that's trying to do like a very precise thing. That's my problem.
Sure. I see what you're saying. I think, like, in terms of like some of the like economic research I've seen, and especially there's people that I know, even like chat's thrown out, like Aaron Dube, some of the things they looked at, and actually like Suckdown left. I forgot, I kept mentioning this to you yesterday, but you had the debate with Vosh. Socialism Done Left, I think, does a really good job in terms of, like, just to pivot really quick, does a really good job in terms of like providing like evidence-based leftism, even though I'm not a lefty. Like,
yeah, the Suckdown Left guy is sick.
Yeah. So like one thing, I guess, that if you were to talk to like the Noah guy or even like Medlock or any of them going forward, something that they constantly bring up is like monopsony labor markets, which like I think you're aware of, right? Like, you know what that is?
Is monopsony basically like you basically have like a de facto monopoly because of reasons that are inhibiting other participants in the market from accurately like competing or whatever? So
monopoly, so like kind of, monopoly is basically an instance where like an entity is the main producer, like distributor, right? And then monopsony is the other way around. Basically, it's the main buyer of said goods or services. So monopsony labor markets are essentially where there's a bunch of workers and essentially one employer.
Yeah. So like, say for instance, you have like a city, right? And your workers can't actually like go around and shop for different wages because they don't have like, say, public transportation to get somewhere or whatever, right?
Right, and essentially in that case, some of the research that I've seen has showed that essentially it could be possible that in a monopsony labor market, which is also the case for many like smaller cities, a higher minimum wage could actually lead to more employment, which seems kind of counterintuitive. But there's like a lot of like integral stuff that goes into that. So if you ever talk to like Noah or like Medlock or any of those guys, I'm sure they'd be able to better explain it than me.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. One thing that's probably important, I see this said a lot, it's probably true, is that wages, minimum wage, so like people will talk about like, oh, minimum wage doesn't have any negative impacts whatsoever on like the market or anything like that, or unemployment or whatever, right? Minimum wage has probably been overwhelmingly positive because it's been so low. I don't know if we would see the same effects if we went to a 15 an hour national minimum wage. That might be like a little bit too intense.
Yeah, and I know like there's many people that will like bring up like other countries and they'll be like, "Oh, look at this country," or like, "Look at Sweden, Norway, whatever." In the Nordic countries, they actually have like really strong unions, which
Yeah.
allows them to have like collective bargaining agreements, and they also have like sectoral unions or sectoral bargaining, which is
Hmm.
like something we don't have here.
Hmm.
We have like enterprise level like unions. So that's like a big distinction there.
Hmm.
I think overall, like I don't know if you saw because you were busy or you've been busy. There was a CBO report that came out yesterday that said essentially like 1.4 million jobs would be lost to a $15 minimum wage. But the amount of people that would be brought out of poverty would be like something close to 900,000. So yeah, there is like definitely like it's not a zero sum game, right? As you always say, in
Yeah, of course,
economics.
yeah. The
Like
only
there's
thing that
always a
scares me there is
trade-off.
that when you find policies that benefit the aggregate, but leave some people behind, it's usually the people at the bottom that get more and more and more fucked. That's my issue. Is that like so like when it would if it would oh, but you're saying lift people out of poverty. I'm curious how that would be defined because my gut reaction is that a 15 an hour minimum wage would probably be beneficial among like a lot of like decently paid like low skilled workers, but the people at the very very bottom would just get pushed out of the market completely. That would be my guess if I had to guess.
Sure, like that's entirely possible.
Hmm.
But the thing is, like the way people view labor markets commonly is just through a common like supply and demand graph, right, or curve. In that, like labor markets are much more complex than that. Like there's always factors that you can't account for. So like in the research, right, like the monopsony power labor markets,
Sure.
from what I've seen, it seems like there is an increase in employment with when the minimum wage is higher,
Hmm.
because essentially there's the
Yeah, I don't
fuck.
disagree with that. But there's probably like a limit to that, right? So like for
Yeah,
instance, being very hyperbolic, we probably wouldn't be able to do a 50 an hour minimum wage, right?
right.
That would probably fuck me. So, like my curiosity is just where is that limit? Because like especially in a monopsony where you can't sell your labor to anybody else because you're fucked, right? That's so like in that case, a higher minimum wage would probably be beneficial. Another thing that might actually boost wages actually is maybe initiatives push for better public transportation. If people could actually get to like different jobs like easier, maybe that would actually push people to get higher wages because then people would have to raise wages to compete for workers more. You know, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. Yeah.
And I think like overall, like pushing for a higher minimum wage shouldn't be the hill to die on. Like I think we should, or at least like in terms of like Biden or like whoever else, like right, the lib left or whatever,
Hmm.
we should be pushing for more like social welfare spending and like stuff like that. Like I don't think minimum wage hikes or whatever should be the hill like we die on.
Yeah, probably not. Do you have any idea how fucking sick the dating market would be if this is gonna sound like some real incel shit, but if guys got together and just started like sucking off the bros and shit, do you know how much harder women would have to step up their game? If
It's
you
a
had to go,
lockout.
do you know all the games you have to play with chicks sometimes? Well, to play with chicks sometimes to like fucking, bang a bitch. Like if you were just like, dude, I'm gonna go fucking hang out with Mark and we're gonna give each other way better blowjobs than you can. We've been sucking each other off since we were fucking, 15 years old. We're not gonna fucking, I'm not playing this dumbass fucking game with you. You don't want to split the check? Fuck that shit.
Well, like gays are the ultimate bros. Not
Yeah,
only do
dude,
they
that would be
not
sick
compete
as
for
fuck.
women, they take another dude with them.
Exactly.
I love
Oh
it.
shit,
This is-
dude.
this is-
Do you know
this
how
is
much more
another
competitive the
argument for
sexual marketplace would
collectively.
get?
So I wanted to touch up on one thing that I brought up yesterday in the minimum wage discussion because I got dragged on it on Twitter for not mentioning it.
Oh no.
Um,
Dragged on Twitter. What?
well, because like I talked to like Liz and all those people,
Big
and
mistake.
they told me, and they told me I forgot to mention this. So one of the key things is on Dube's literature, which I think I mentioned to you yesterday. The research. In general, they found that the minimum wage isn't harmful if it's below about 60% of the median wage. So that's one thing that I forgot to bring up. So as long as the minimum wage is about 60% of the median wage, it doesn't really seem to have such a negative impact on employment. So yeah.
Okay, that's
Um,
possible. That sounds a little suspect to me. Like, I wonder if that's causal, or if that just is like how those labor markets tend to be. But that could be the case. I guess I don't know. It seems reasonable enough. I could think of reasons why that wouldn't be true, and if somebody told me it was true, I wouldn't like immediately think it's not true. But sure.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like unfortunately, like I am not in the position to like argue for that. But I think like I said yesterday, Noah does a good job, and then even like the Aaron Doob guy, if you ever wanted to check out his work. Um, and then I just had one like quick thing, if that's cool with you, because I don't want to hog up the time.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So I was really happy that you talked to Kraut yesterday. And I know chat's gonna shit on me because I always mention this, but I'm friends with Kraut. And I like his content and I like your content. Um, but the one thing I guess that like Kraut and I talk about too, especially is do you think like, and this is a do you think question, but do you think like the political extremism online, so like people jumping from like far right
To far
to like
left.
far, yeah, do you think like going forward like that's going to be something, I don't know, like in terms of like not sustainable, but do you think that's something that's like eventually going to have such negative consequences?
I mean, I think it already does have negative consequences. It's really, really, really bad.
Yeah, I feel like I was in that position, not really, like a couple years, 4 years ago when I was 16, I like was a Trump supporter or whatever because it was cool like in high school to like be like, oh, I like Trump. And then I kind of like started to find like my political beliefs. So I've always kind of been now in like the left or like left of center like ideology for like the last 3 or 4 years. Like that's what I like have researched and done stuff like that. But I think like I think my problem is like um and I don't want to call people out, but I think like people like Sean Head do such like a great harm to like online politics.
Yeah, because they just bounce around for whatever's like the extremist, trendiest, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like promoting like if you're promoting like really far right stuff, because Sean Head was like really bad too. Like she literally defended Ethan Ralph or whatever. And I know you've gone on his podcast, but that guy's like an actual like Holocaust denier.
He's something else. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like that's super cringe. But then to see her like totally revamp her politics and now be like this super like far left like Bernie bro, it's just kind of weird to me. Yeah, I don't know if it's like if they're like grifting or if they like actually believe in what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
He says that he would only consider dating people that are objectively unattractive. Have you had this conversation before with him?
I have not.
Oh my god, this is a misrepresentation of my personal thoughts, okay?
Oh, Destiny.
Mega yikes to me in the chat.
Ah, Jesus.
This was a discussion about my heuristics when interacting with women at anonymously at bars, right? We did not meet anonymously, nor at a, well, actually we did meet at a bar.
Yeah, so
Your
Stanley
one of your
basically,
heuristics
wait,
should
hold on,
not
wait,
be
no,
saying-
so I'm just curious. I'm sorry, I can clear Stanley here real fast. Stanley says that he only approaches unattractive women. Did you approach him or did he approach you?
It wasn't really.
Steven, you're killing me, dude.
It wasn't really.
Where does modern day socialism come from? I do not remember it being fashionable 10 years ago, but right wing has always existed. I don't really think that most socialists are socialists. I don't think most of them don't know what any of it means or the implications of any of it. I think that what we find, here's my riveting historical political analysis. My guess is that there's probably a more simple observation that could be made. There are probably like trends of populism that kind of flow and ebb and flow in society. And I think right now, or at least over the past like 10 years, we've kind of been like on an uptick of populism. And I think right now it just kind of, it needs a vehicle, and the current vehicle is like socialism. Like, depending on how the wind blows, I think that any of these like socialist people could just as easily be Nazbols, you know? Like, I think it's just whatever the best populist driving vehicle is at the time. Do you think the uptick in populism is probably because of more internet access and lack of fact checking? Good question. Who knows?
My theory here is that you have people who travel from across the world to come to the iconic Times Square ball drop. The iconic.
That'd be
Times Square
appropriate
ball.
for an audience of Fortnite fans, though, huh? I'm sorry. Okay, keep going.
Do you think it has to do with the focus of the rhetoric? Like and I see this a lot, and I think it's probably one of the biggest differences between people on the left and people on the right, where the focus of the rhetoric of the left is who's responsible for the betterment of society. It's not the individual, it's the government, it's the society as a whole, as a group.
Sure.
whereas the personal responsibility side is the conservative side, so-called. So maybe that's at the root, right? They've grown up.
Yeah, but I guess I just would have wished that, like, it's hard for me to imagine that people could actually be so one-dimensional about that. Like, there's varying levels of responsibility depending on what the problem is and depending on what our abilities are, right? That seems like it would be pretty obvious to me, but.
Oh, I totally agree. But I see it all the time, especially with people with huge platforms. Like, I listen to some Joe Rogan, and he talks about how he wants to see the nation as a giant community and everybody taking care of each other. But he doesn't mean him. Mm-hmm. He means that we would pay our taxes, and then the government would do this thing and create this utopian community to make sure everybody's cared for. But, in practice, it has to be each individual has to take care of what's happening around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I don't think I disagree.
Yeah, I just think it was a something that I've always seen. It's not a mystery. I think. I think it's just it's born out of the kind of thinking that you're brought up in, I think.
Oh, sure. Depending on the political affiliation you have, or depending, I guess, on the type of talking to you get. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't live there now, but you grew up essentially as a conservative Christian, went libertarian, went left, but all of your, if I met you and talked to you and didn't know you were an atheist, I wouldn't think you were.
Yeah, sure. I would. Yeah, hope so. Yeah.
Enjoy arguing semantics. You're going to continue to lose and get done.
I know. I feel like I'm losing so hard over here with my 14,000
Sorry,
viewers.
hold on,
Holy
Let me
shit!
get up. I don't want to hit Destiny with my balls when I leave the room.
Don't worry, my dude. They have to descend from your body before you can hit anybody with them first.
Do you think that most people will analyze an event or an action on their own moral framework first, or do you think that they just default to whatever their ideology or whatever their favorite content
ideology
creator?
I would say less than 5% of people have any coherent moral framework by which they analyze what's good or bad.
Okay. And sort of to tack onto that, at that point, do you think that having moral arguments with people has really any point? Because it seems to me like there's just too much subjectivity in most, specific moral stances.
Yeah, I guess the goal would be to make people think a little bit. That would be like the dream. Is it like, oh, like I'd never actually considered that before. I guess people meme about it now, but that was the original point of like the incest argument. It's like, here's something that is just on its face so obviously wrong, but then, tasked with providing like an actual cognitive reason why it's wrong. It was very uncomfortable and very challenging to do so. It's like, oh, well, maybe this just makes you think a little bit. That was like the whole goal of that argument, basically, yeah.
Yeah, but the issue with that is like you never really change anyone's mind with that, though, right? So
well, the
really
goal
the
is
point?
that like, well, you're never gonna change somebody's mind. It's just to kind of like get that process started. That like maybe you think a little bit about like, oh, well, like I don't have an answer to that, and maybe that like spurs you on into thinking about like other things. It's like, oh, well, I'm gonna consider this, and maybe I'll consider that or whatever. Maybe that's just like the catalyst, I guess. But the goal of like an argument like that isn't to like make somebody pro incest or something, right? It's more just to kind of get them to look at how they view morality, in a slightly different way.
Yeah. Okay. I get that.
Have incest that doesn't involve inbreeding or unhealthy power dynamics. It's possible, right? Like every single hamburger, has like let's say something you say like I hate hamburgers, okay? But you actually, and then I say, well, why do you hate hamburgers? And you go, well, because ketchup is disgusting and mustard is disgusting and onions are fucking gross and I don't like buns either. Well, okay, well, you haven't told me why hamburgers are disgusting because you can just have a hamburger without any of that other stuff, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Even though oftentimes hamburgers are served with ketchup or mustard, it's not intrinsic to being a hamburger.
I wasn't expecting that comeback.
Okay.
I honestly was. That fucked me. You got me there, man, I guess. Fuck. Shit.
Cranium Bone Party. What is up, dude?
I've been having a question I've been wanting to ask you for a while.
Well, you know what? What a perfect opportunity for you to be in my Discord channel with the opportunity to ask me a question.
All right, let me mute the stream real quick so I don't...
Be my guest.
So, I guess one question I've had for a long time is, do you ever talk to somebody and you kind of they're not quite clicking on all the same gears, like, how do you know that you're more intelligent than somebody? And like, do you ever feel like that kind of like separates yourself from other people?
It's not really a question I ever try to consider. Whether or not you are not more intelligent than somebody, I don't think is, one, it's very hard to even know that, and then two, I don't think it's relevant to most discussions, right?
Well, I don't know. I guess the thing is like, I consider you somebody who's ridiculously intelligent.
Wow,
yeah, don't let it go to your head. But, you know, it's like you debate a lot of these people, and it just seems like they can't even, like, grasp things on, you know, like, a basic level. And so, like, do you just ever encounter people where you're like, how do they function in society, you know, like...
I mean, I think it's important to understand that, like, whether or not I consider myself to be smarter or dumber than any other individual, the people's inability to grasp something isn't usually related to their intelligence. Usually there's something else going on. Like, I don't think I cover any topic on my stream that is just so absurdly complicated that only my massive brain can understand it. I think it's more just the reason why people don't engage with what I'm saying has more to do with, like, they're either ideologically bought into something or they're emotionally connected to some point, rather than like, oh, well, their brain is just too small to understand the marketplace of ideas that I'm throwing at them.
Maybe intelligence isn't the right word, but I don't know. Sorry.
I forgive you.
And then I guess just another question I had was, as far as David Pakman goes, are you friends with him, or like what's your relationship?
I mean, we're friendly. I don't know if we talk enough to be considered friends, but like I like him. I'll go out and eat with him and hang out and stuff and chat with him anytime I want. So yeah, if you consider that a friend, then yeah, we're friends.
I was just curious because I thought he had a really kind of bad take on circumcision. I was curious if you had ever seen his take on that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty dog shit. But a lot of people are like very personally invested in the outcome of that argument. So what are you gonna do?
All right. Well, thanks for answering my questions. Appreciate it.
No problem, dude. I appreciate you. I hope you feel appreciated today.
I just want to thank you. You've given me the arguments I needed to maintain an incestuous relationship with my sister. So thank you.
No problem, buddy.
I know you talk about it a lot when you're kind of like saying why you feel like people watch you, and you don't feel like anything you necessarily say is super unique or anything like that. But at the same time, when you talk about like why people watch you, you talk about stuff like your aesthetic, that the way you talk about things is kind of unique, the sort of like analogies you use and stuff. So that it kind of feels like, on one hand, you acknowledge that you have a very unique sort of style of talking about stuff, but then you also like say that, well, most people should be thinking like this.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a unique in terms of like entertainment, I would agree. But when it comes to something like having integrity as a person, I thought that these concepts were a lot more universal, I guess.
Well, so one thing in the past like year, right, you didn't realize that local stuff had as much of an impact, and then you sort of changed on that. And then as a result of that, you started doing the canvassing stuff. I think there is that's like probably not that unique of like a problem to run into. That I would imagine that there's other content creators, maybe like lefties, who don't realize that they can have like a larger impact with their sort of brand or something like that, similar to like how you didn't realize like you could actually have this sort of impact on stuff.
I guess it feels a little bit different to me though, when it feels like these people are literally like constantly advocating for a change in the entire organization of the world, and then on top of that saying that like the world is ready for a change entirely too, right? Like a lot of these people are saying that like Americans are ready for a progressive revolution, we're going to lead, or we need a revolution, and then they don't do anything in their lives to show that they want a revolution. It just seems kind of weird to me.
I mean, I think you would agree, right, that the level of people ready for this sort of change is like definitely not at the place where it needs to be for there to be like any sort of actual changes, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Wait, give me 1 second, okay? Hold on, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so no, I was talking about how like right now there isn't that sort of like obviously popular like political will to kind of like affect what they're trying to do right now, right?
But that's what they say though. They keep claiming that. That's one of my biggest disagreements with a lot of these people. They keep saying like all of America or the majority of America wants certain policies. They're ready for these types of things, but like politicians aren't acting on it. It's like, okay, well then do something.
No, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I guess the messaging there is a little bit off. The only thing I'd say is that too is I would say probably at this point like messaging is like by far and away like the biggest thing that they could do as a content creator to try and get people to their side now.
I mean, like in a holistic, like overall worldview thing, but I feel like doing individual acts of service or doing things that make, like when I spread a message, I imagine I'm making like incremental improvements in a lot of people's lives, but direct action helps me make massive improvements in like a few people's lives. I don't know. I feel like that's something that should naturally extend from what you do. It might be, you might be right that maybe people just don't know what to do maybe. And I guess if that's the case, then hopefully they spend a little bit more time thinking about it, but.
Really quick, so I just wanted to ask chat, like, do you guys feel like Destiny is like relatively unique in the way he conducts himself? Like, I don't know many content creators, but
I'm sure that there are a lot of things that are unique about me for sure. That's not something that I'm like going to contest. Like I always tell people like, oh, like if you're going to be like a streamer, like you should have something unique about you. Of course, obviously I know that, but there are certain principles that I argue for, certain concepts I argue for that I don't think should be that unique. Like, and that might just be an upbringing. Like for me to say like if you have certain principles, those should be reflected in the way that you live. That I like if you would have asked me, if you poll a group of 100 people, how many would agree with that statement? My assumption would be like 85 plus would just like de facto agree with that without even a second.
I agree that a lot of people would agree with that, but what that looks like in practice for a lot of people might differ because they don't think about like that sort of like how that plays out.
But that's not what other people have argued. Like I could agree in practice. There are a lot of things that I've done in my life that have been bad things, immoral things, and stupid things, and dumb things, and I continue to make mistakes. Like I'm not going to say argue I'm perfect all the time, but I would never argue that oh well, I should do bad things or that I shouldn't have to do good things. Like I think that's the difference.
I guess at the end of the day, it just you're already at that conclusion base, and it's just I feel like realizations kind of like with the canvassing thing, those are like stuff that people still have to get through, and just because you're easily able to come to that sort of conclusion doesn't mean that other people are. And I know you've also talked about it in the past that you don't like to think like, well, I have to like baby everyone and bring them to all these conclusions and stuff. But yeah, like I mean, Booksmarts was talking about it earlier too, that like it's just the way that you've been brought up and like the way you think about things like leads you to these places, but it's like not as obvious to others. So it's just like I don't know if that's the other thing was do you hate that other content creators audiences don't like you, like, or like not hate but like is that something that's like annoying to you? Or
I don't mind it when people don't like.
Yeah,
I don't mind it when people don't like me. I did get really annoyed when people don't like me for stupid reasons. Like if you don't like me because I'm too much of a liberal or whatever, that's fine. I don't care. But if you don't like me because I'm a Nazi, that's really fucking weird to me and pretty annoying. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I feel the other thing I was just gonna say is that probably is played into a part by like the way you go about your analogies for stuff, and it's just if they were less abrasive, you might run into that less, but I understand that you've also talked about how it's like part of your brain and stuff. But yeah, okay, thanks.
That's not true. That's just dumb as fuck. Like, okay, sure, maybe if you have absolutely no money, a fuck ton of debt, absolutely no friends, and absolutely no family, and absolutely no coworkers that can help you move, maybe those people are fucked, sure. But even at that, it might be worth it to take on a little bit of debt to move out of an area that you can't afford. Like, the most important part of your budget is where you fucking live. What?
Like, probably an econ question.
Okay.
So during COVID, like a lot of the news, it stated that like over 800 small businesses were closing like every day. And the way they stated, like it was a problem.
I wonder
like,
if it is. I wonder how many small businesses normally close. I don't actually know. It wouldn't surprise me if there were more small businesses closing than not. But anytime I get absolute numbers, it makes me very suspect. I'm not sure. I'm not saying people are lying intentionally, but I'm curious like how many close per day normally, right? Like there's like probably millions of small businesses in the U.S.
Because if you do bad, you just close like any other time. My more question: should we, as a society, should we value small businesses over large businesses? Because it seems like when large businesses mess up, there's more liability with lawsuits and other things that you will not get with small businesses.
Yeah, I don't know. I talk about this every now and then, but I don't know. I could just be wrong. Maybe I fucking hate small businesses personally, but I don't know. Maybe there's like good reasons for that. Like all of my worst like experiences working were with fucking small businesses because there's no HR, there's no accountability, the pay is usually shit, the nepotism is unbelievable. Like I don't know. I hate like my personal experience with small businesses, but. I don't know. Maybe there might be in some cases good reasons for them to exist. Maybe they foster innovation in the United States. Maybe,
I feel like
I don't know.
I feel like most small why people praise small businesses are like because it's local. They like the community feeling, and that's all people value.
The only thing, the only time I like small businesses is when they're offering like a very unique service that, that being a small business. So like, there's a guy in not Sioux Falls, Iowa. I don't remember the city. There's a guy that runs a store called Tenor Madness in Iowa, and that dude is like a master of fucking saxophones. He's just like a god. You can give him a horn and he will be able to do everything with it. And like, if you're in the Midwest, you're going to this guy to get a new horn. Or if you get like a new horn, you're giving it to him to check the intonation, to see if it needs to like bend or break anything or whatever. Like the guy is like, So like in that sense, like I could never go to a big broker or not a big broker, I'm sorry, like a big retail store or something probably and get that level of stuff for that specialty or specialized of a thing. So in that case, like small businesses for specialty services are probably really good, I would think, but
But these are the type of people, like during COVID, they're probably not going to close because they're like, they're the only one available, right?
Do what? Say that again.
So during COVID, like they're not a part of the 800 number, right? Like, because
I don't know.
Specialized.
Well, it might be the case, and I don't know. I'm only giving you hypotheses because I don't know. But it might be the case that those are actually the first businesses to go under. It might be the case that big businesses enable the survival of small businesses like that, because for big businesses, you save enough money that you're able to spend your extra money at a small business. But those small, hyper-specialized businesses might be the first spending to get cut from a household if that household is not getting enough money. Possibly, but maybe not. You know?
Yeah, okay. Because I always see it on the news. I was just wondering, like, I don't know, like people value. I personally, I don't go to any small businesses that I can think of, like, but it seems like people just somehow value, like, because when they say the 800 number, they're like, this is a bad thing. We need to, like, change this. And I personally just don't understand it.
Sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's something to think about. Like, there might be, I don't know, maybe I should read some of it, Because my gut is always, like, pretty, I don't fucking care about small businesses, but there might be really good reasons to do so. Maybe I should spend some more time thinking about that.
Do you consider somebody like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, are these SJWs to you, or?
Not to me personally, but that's because I agree with their philosophy.
Okay, so you've literally defined SJW as somebody you disagree with. Like, is that really the definition? That's what you just said.
Yeah, kind of. I think everyone has, like, someone is an SJW to someone else.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.